The lunar soil was softer than expected. Each step sank a little too far, each boot imprint lingering like a whisper in dust that hadn't been disturbed for eons. Commander Harris hated the quiet. He'd been to space before, but this, standing on the moon's surface, the vast blackness yawning above, this was different. The silence wasn't just a lack of sound, it felt alive, pressing against the walls of his helmet like an unwelcome thought he couldn't shake. Collins and Vega moved ahead, their suits ghostly white against the gray terrain. Their voices buzzed faintly in his ear, static like flies caught in a screen. Harris squinted at the shadow of the crater they were approaching. It wasn't marked on their maps. The moon had been mapped to hell and back, but this one wasn't on any scans, not even the updated schematics sent before launch. Vega crouched at the edge of the crater. It wasn't deep, maybe 10 feet down, but its walls shimmered faintly, as if lined with glass beneath the surface. Collins kicked a rock, watching it tumble lazily. It didn't bounce, it simply vanished into the dust. Harris frowned, uneasy. Rocks shouldn't disappear. Vega's voice broke the silence again, sharper now. There's a structure down there, metallic, like a hatch. She was already halfway in before Harris could stop her. Her movements were purposeful, as if something was pulling her. He barked an order, but she ignored him. Collins followed, more cautiously. Harris hesitated, glancing at the earth hanging above the horizon. It felt farther away than it should have. When Harris descended into the crater, the air in his suit felt colder, though his instruments read no change. Vega and Collins were kneeling by the hatch, brushing away the dust. The metal was etched with symbols, not letters, not hieroglyphs, but something fluid and serpentine, like the language of things that never needed mouths to speak. Vega traced them with her gloved hand. For the first time since their mission began, she sounded afraid. It's warm. Collins had already found the panel. It wasn't complicated, just a smooth surface with a faint indentation that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Harris shouted, "Don't touch it!" but Collins pressed it anyway. The hatch opened without a sound, revealing a tunnel that spiraled downward, its walls shimmering with the same glassy sheen as the crater. Harris wanted to turn back. Protocol demanded it. But as Vega descended, her helmet light casting long shadows, something in his chest tightened, a compulsion he couldn't explain. He followed. Collins trailed behind, his breathing shallow over the comms. The tunnel grew narrower the farther they went, the glass walls now transparent. Beyond them was nothing, not blackness, not space, just a void so deep it seemed to fold inward, like staring into infinity and finding it staring back. Harris realized with a chill that the walls weren't glass. They were eyes, countless, unblinking, watching their every move. He stopped, trying to speak, but his voice cracked and failed. Vega was farther ahead, moving faster now, as if she knew where she was going. She reached a chamber at the end of the tunnel, a space too vast to exist beneath the moon's surface. The floor was smooth, reflective like water, and in the center was a column of light stretching upward, endlessly. Floating within it were objects, earthly objects, radios, cameras, satellites, an old Apollo mission emblem. Harris realized what this was, not a base, a vault, a place where things were taken, observed, stored, and now, them. Vega was standing too close to the column. Her helmet light flickered, and she froze. When she spoke, her voice was distant, detached. They know we're here. Before Harris could react, she stepped into the light and vanished, her body dissolving like sand in the wind. Colin screamed, stumbling backward, but the walls of the chamber began to shift, the eyes closing one by one. The air grew heavy, pressing against their suits. Harris grabbed Collins, pulling him toward the tunnel, but it was no longer there. The chamber had sealed them in. Above, the light column pulsed, brighter now, and Harris felt something in his mind unraveling. Thoughts that weren't his whispered, threading through his brain like needles. It was never hollow. It was never just the moon. It was watching. It had always been watching. The last thing Harris saw before the light consumed him was the earth, small and fragile in the distance, disappearing as the void swallowed everything. And then there was silence again.